if it was a job and not a calling, I would feel better about never being a seminary teacher myself. You know what I
fair.
mean? Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Saints Unscripted. I'm Alex.
I'm David.
And I'm Wilson.
So today we're going to be talking about how just seminary in general, how we went to seminary, what our experiences were. And we're going to talk about how something later on, how it's a little bit different here in Utah than it is in other places. And we will get to that. So first off, how was seminary for you guys? Did you guys enjoy it? Was it a good experience?
Yeah, I loved seminary. It was, I grew up in Oregon, and next to my high school, there was this little building. It was like a double wide almost, very small building where we had seminary. Mm-hmm. And we had release time for it. So in other words, it was basically like a class in our regular schedule, but it was 0 credits, I believe. So the counselors were always like, if you take seminary, you're not going to have enough credits to graduate, which was just poppycock. It worked out fine. It was totally fine. And I took it, every year, I believe, in high school. And yeah, the teachers were just called from our stake, and they weren't paid, but they were fantastic and great experience overall.
Yeah. So what about you? Did you enjoy seminary growing up?
I did. I had a really good seminary experience as well. I was really busy in high school, but the way it worked in my town, as I've mentioned before, I grew up in Texas. And we didn't have as many members of the church in my area. So we didn't have like release time seminary. We would get out of school to go to seminary class. But what we would do is we'd have it early in the morning before school. And it was really tricky because there are a lot of football players that went to my high school that were also members of the church and people in the band. And I played baseball and I played sports. We would have things in the morning. So we had to have it at 6 a.m. Monday through Friday, every day. And so it was a bit of a sacrifice. I was exhausted pretty much all of high school because it's like we have seminary at 6 a.m., lift weights at 7 a.m., school all day, practice for 3 hours at night. Like it's a whole routine and it's day in, day out. So I was exhausted, but I also loved it. Like I had great teachers, just like David said. They were just called from the stake. Pretty much they were just volunteers. They weren't paid, but they tried their best. And I still learned a lot. And it got me into just good habits as a teenager that I think was really important for me.
Yeah.
So overall, great experience.
I'm right with you there. I also had to get up super, super early to make it to 6 a.m. seminary. And that was especially terrible when it was winter because you got the freezing cold morning before the sun had even come up.
I wouldn't know.
It's a time. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm right with you. It was exhausting, but I also had a great experience. My dad was my teacher my freshman year. So that was a fun way to get started into seminary, was having my dad teach. And so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I loved all of my teachers. I thought they were super fun. They were really good at teaching and keeping us engaged. And it was a fun experience.
I will say that I think it was a good thing to have a time to learn about the gospel that was not in a church building.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I totally agree.
It was just a little less formal and a little bit more relaxed, and you could do different activities, and
for sure.
It was more of like learning about the gospel in an actual in a classroom, in a high school classroom, basically. I mean, it was different. It was very different than a high school classroom
That's
in some ways. But I will say that I will never forget. I feel to this day, I feel bad because some of the kids in one of my classes were just so bad. Just teenagers,
They're high schoolers.
Yeah, they were high schoolers. But we collectively, our class treated some of the teachers so poorly, and they were just these sweet ladies that were just volunteering
sacrificing their time, waking up just as early as us to be there. Or well, my bad, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, for us. Sorry.
Privileged. I'm like that Twilight meme with the Volturi guys looking down from the balcony at all the early morning seminary kids.
Oh, He doesn't even know. He doesn't even know what it's like.
He'll never understand.
Yeah, if my seminary teacher is watching this, I have apologized to one specifically so many times because it's like a core memory in my mind. Just her, just like crying in class. That's not what every seminary class is like. We were just really bad kids. Any happier stories to follow that up with?
Happier stories.
Well, I can follow it up with something I thought was interesting.
Yes, please.
I have happy stories, great experiences. But one thing that stood out to me that I thought was interesting is I had a discussion in one of my classes. Maybe it was like a week or two ago, but we were talking about seminary. And I was surprised because it was someone who grew up in Utah who had release time. She talked about how horrible her seminary experience was. And that was really interesting because I had never really heard of someone who didn't enjoy seminary. And they said a lot of it came down to the fellow students in her class who just weren't taking it seriously. Yeah. And especially because they were just kind of taking it as like a slack off class. Like you didn't really have to do anything, right?
Yeah.
Because they had release time. Yeah. So I just thought that surprised me because I'd never really heard that before. Yeah. But
that's interesting.
Yeah. It saddens me that there are experiences out there like that just because mine was great and spiritually uplifting.
Yeah. Well, I have a positive experience. I remember, I don't know if this was like a thing that everybody did or if it was just my classes. I can't even remember if we did it all 4 years. I just remember my freshman year when my dad was the teacher, every Friday we would get donuts. And that was super awesome. I don't know.
If that's not doctrine, it should be.
I know, right?
Is that in the handbook somewhere?
Write it down.
It was awesome.
Anyone from Church HQ listening?
Let's make that in the handbook. That needs to happen. That'll get the teenagers to wake up early and come to class.
It's true. Seminary attendance will skyrocket.
Oh yeah.
At least on Fridays.
Friday was the day that we had the most, like the best attendance because they knew we were going to have donuts there and it was awesome.
Isn't that's kind of sad. It's
I know.
Kind of sad. Because we had the same thing. There was one teacher. It was Sister Pusey.
No way.
We were just talking about the
Puseys.
She would make bread. And like honey butter.
Oh.
And it was, and you get a lot of kids those days, you know? But it's sad that we have to be motivated by more than just the blessing of learning about the gospel. I am so old.
Well, does it ever change though? Like at least as a college student, if you say there's free fruit somewhere, like everyone shows up. That. Like I showed up to an accounting, like what's it called? Like networking event, and I'm doing communications. But they had free pizza, so I was there.
Heck yeah.
So I don't know, maybe it's an eternal principle. But
an accounting jamboree.
One could say.
That's awesome.
Okay, so here's a question for you guys. Some seminary teachers in Utah, and I don't know if there are any outside of Utah, maybe in like Arizona or Idaho or something.
Yeah.
It's their full-time job teaching seminary, 40 hours a week, lots and lots of students. They get paid for it. Other teachers, like the ones we grew up with, it was a calling. And I'm imagining probably not full-time, but you still got to do the prep work and, teach lessons and whatnot. What do you guys think? Do you think that all seminary teachers should be paid, or do you think it's fine as is, or should none of them be paid? What do you think?
So I think, Alex, you and I will both have an interesting perspective here because my mom is also a seminary teacher right now.
Okay.
And so I kind of saw the amount of preparation that she put into seminary, and because she was just called from the stake, right? But she put in a ton of work and a ton of time and tears into preparing and caring for her seminary students. So I've seen the amount of dedication that goes into it when it's just a calling. But at the same time, I recognize that in Utah, I know seminary teachers, they don't just like start teaching seminary, but they go through training and religious education, and they're hired, and it's a whole process, and they are teaching even more. So personally, I would kind of say that no, I think it should stay as a calling unless seminary teachers were to go through more training and more education. Then I think that it would probably warrant payment in some form, more than just the blessings that my mom has obviously received from being a seminary teacher. But no.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that it feels like something that should just be a calling, but like you said, if they have gone through training, and if it really is like 40 hours a week and they're teaching a ton of kids, then it's like, okay, at that point, maybe you should be paid for your time. Like that's a hefty job.
Significant
to do.
sacrifice.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think it's so, I'm so back and forth on it the more I think about it, because I'm like, yeah, no, it should be a calling. Oh, but at the same time, it's kind of, and I think that also ties into my personal feelings about being a seminary teacher. If we're just going to get real here for a second, if it was a job and not a calling, I would feel better about never being a seminary teacher myself. You know what I mean?
Fair.
Like, I personally have never really wanted to be a seminary teacher. And I think that mainly is because I grew up with early morning seminary. And so I wouldn't want to get up that early and teach a bunch of grumpy teenagers. And so it's like, yeah, if it was a job everywhere, then I wouldn't have to worry about ever being called to be a seminary teacher. I'm just being real honest with you guys today. But other than that, I mean, yeah, I think it's so up in the air, and it really is complicated, and it depends.
Well, I'm just interested. Do you think that if it were to become a job, if seminary teachers were paid, would that then like increase the quality of seminary classes around the country or around the world? Because someone can live off of it, so we can have the best religious educators teaching the youth. I don't know.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think it probably would.
Would that change for you guys? Would you guys want to be seminary teachers?
I would. Yeah. I think I'd be a seminary teacher. Yeah.
Okay. But if it wasn't,
if it was a calling, ooh.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's different.
Well, and it's like it would be my mother was a seminary teacher as well.
Wow, look at this
here. Look at that.
But it is a significant, like, some callings take more time than others. And seminary teacher is one of those that I think takes more time than others. I wouldn't mind if they were paid. Obviously, if it's a 40-hour a week thing and you're teaching classes all day, every day, obviously you shouldn't be paid as the same as a teacher that teaches
one period
once or twice a week for a small group of kids, you know? But I wouldn't mind at all if there was some compensation there. And it's kind of the odd one out when it comes to like callings. Like most callings are you're in your quorum or your, relief society, your organization, your presidency, or you're fulfilling your calling at the church, during church. It's very like church building oriented. I don't know. And then seminary teacher is like more like a high school teacher vibe to it a little bit. Okay. But that being said,
true,
there is the danger of if you go down that road of, starting to pay all of the seminary teachers, like there's a lot that comes with that. Then are people going to be like campaigning for the position or like submitting applications or like, what about benefits and how does that all play out? And what about like priestcraft and like, are you then making money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause at that point it's not like a calling from the church anymore. It's
a job.
It's a job, which it is, but yeah, it would be like seminary is, but if you were to start doing that with all the other callings, then that would really change some things. Yeah, for sure.
Well, also at the same time, like, where do you draw the line, right?
Yeah.
Because like bishops are also putting in significant amounts of time through interviews and through just all the help and service that they provide.
Yeah.
Like that's also a pretty significant time sacrifice. Like, should they be compensated? Stake presidents, like how far does that go? Like where we just value the amount of time you put into a calling, right?
And they used to be compensated in the early years of the church. Doctrine and Covenants. I'm not going to give you a specific reference. I'm just going to say a book of scripture.
It's out
Throw it out there.
Doctrine and Covenants.
Exactly.
Read your Doctrine and Covenants. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, good questions though. I don't know that there are a lot of factors that kind of pour into it.
Not really black and white there, at least for me.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments how you guys feel about seminary. What was your experience? And what do you think about what we talked about today? Should it be compensated or not? Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you later. Bye.